here. As you know, you are here with Score Main today, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to our 60-minute webinar about hiring your first employee. For those who do not know, SCORE is a resource partner with the Small Business Administration, and we help clients at all stages of the business cycle, from pre-start all the way through to exit. We'd like to thank MTI, Maine Technology Institute, or Maine Technological, I think it's Maine Technology Institute, I should get that right, for making this event possible. They provide all sorts of grants and programs for various businesses in kind of specific sectors across the state, so definitely check them out. And we look forward to responding to your questions as well. As I was talking about earlier, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll tackle them when we can. Otherwise, Danielle, please take it away.
Hi, thank you for coming today. I am looking forward to speaking with you and answering any questions. If I didn't answer any of your questions during the presentation, please feel free to reach out and I will provide some contact information for you during the presentation. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, and my screen is very quick. My name is Danielle Nemeth. I have over 20 years of experience in HR. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership, a bachelor's degree in human resource management. One of my favorite jobs ever is being a SCORE mentor. Obviously, I'm a volunteer. I'm a Mainer, born and raised in Lewiston, and then I recently opened my own consulting company, and it's called Anna's Coaching and HR Consulting Company. That's just a little bit about me and my experience. So what I wanted to ask is I really want to know about you and your business and the nature of your business. I want you to provide that information. So if you could provide it in the chat, like Michael said, that would be fantastic. That would just give me a little bit more information so I can answer your questions. And then if you provide your email address, I can connect with you on LinkedIn, or I can connect with you any other way and then answer any additional questions that you have. I always like to follow up with people and make sure that everything that I'm talking about has it really just kind of sticks with everybody. So as I mentioned, my computer screen is really touchy. Thank you for entering all that information in chat. I appreciate that. So we have a lot to talk about today. It's a lot of dry information, but essential information for your business. It's going to be very high level, and I tried to make it as easy as possible, but there is a lot of information to cover, as I said. So the essential steps for hiring an employee, your first employee, we are going to cover applying for an EIN number. That's federal and state, how to access that. We're going to talk about the cost and consideration when you hire an employee. We'll talk about the job description and job classification, employee handbooks, and employment posters. We'll talk about the new hire paperwork, and then we'll talk about the hiring process itself. So the first step when hiring an employee, and hold on, that didn't go quite. Okay, here we go. The first step is your employer identification number. And your employer identification number is the way you pay employees and pay your taxes. So your EIN number is like a social security number for your business. So it's really essential that you have that. And you can obtain an EIN number on the IRS website at irs.gov. It's free and it is instant. Sorry, my screen keeps going. Okay, it's a free and it's instant, and we are talking about the IRS website, so don't hold me to that. But it is a free application process, and you do instantly get your EIN number. Then once you have that, you want to register that with the Maine Revenue Service. Maine State Revenue Service at maine.gov. And then you want to also contact the Department of Labor and register there, so you can pay your unemployment taxes. So when hiring an employee, there's a lot to consider, and we're going to call this step 2. So there's a lot to consider when you hire your first employee. So it's not just about hiring hourly. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to hire someone, it's 15 bucks an hour and it will be great. I can afford it. There's a lot of other factors to consider. One, the pay is definitely a factor, but there are some benefits that you need to consider as well. Are you going to be offering benefits? Are you going to be offering paid time off? Those are some things to consider. There's also mandatory benefits you need to think about when you're hiring your first employee, and that's workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. Those are mandatory taxes, and those take effect just hiring your first employee. There are also miscellaneous costs that go into hiring an employee to think about, and those are like the cost of advertising. When you advertise, it's obviously not cheap. There's administrative cost to think about, how you're going to process payroll, how you're going to, sorry, my presentation keeps jumping. How you're going to process payroll, the equipment. Do they need a laptop? Are they going to need software with that laptop? Will they need a cell phone so you can contact them? Do they need mileage reimbursement? So there's just a lot of other costs to consider than just processing just that $15 an hour. Once you figure out, okay, I can afford it, I want to hire somebody for sure, and I'm going to advertise the position. So you really want to create a job description. And the job description sets clear expectations for the employee of what they're going to be doing on the job. So the first thing to do is classify the job. Is your job going to be an hourly position, or is your job going to be an exempt position, salary versus hourly? And there's some strict guidelines around classification, and we're going to discuss that in the next slide. But for the sake of the job description, you really want to have a job summary, and you kind of want to outline it how it is in my slide. Is you want to outline a job summary, and of course my slide's jumping again. And I promise I'm not even touching this slide. Okay, so the job summary is, what is the purpose of the position? You want to do a brief description of the position. You want to make sure that the job responsibilities outline the primary duties of the position, what is going to be performed. Be very specific and be very clear when you're talking about your job responsibilities. Will they be processing payroll, and how, just exactly how will they be processing payroll? And if you have any questions about writing a job description, please feel free to reach out to me as a SCORE volunteer. I'd be happy to help you. In the job description, the next thing you want to think about is the qualifications. Like, what skills do they need to actually do the job? What education do they need? You know, if you're hiring somebody like a heavy equipment operator, you want to make sure that they know how to run an excavator or they know how to run a loader. But if you want to hire a payroll processor, then obviously you want to make sure that those job qualifications are set up to that payroll process, like processing payroll, 3 years of experience processing payroll. Maybe they need a payroll certification to satisfy your job. So you want to be very clear on the qualifications of the job description. Then lastly, what you want to do is do the physical attributes of the work environment. So if you are hiring a heavy equipment operator, you want to let them know that you're going to be in a machine working, sitting for long periods of time, and that you need to lift 50 pounds. But if you're hiring somebody in an office, you want them to know that it's an office environment and that um, they'll be sitting as well, and they might occasionally have to um, walk to pick up mail or whatever. So you want to be very specific on exactly what the physical attributes of the work environment are going to be. So I just recently talked about the job description, and then I said we would get to job classification for hourly versus salary. This is very important to make sure that you classify your position right. You don't want to just hire somebody and say, oh, I'm going to hire them as in a salary position so I don't have to pay overtime. That doesn't quite sit well with the Department of Labor. And there are criteria that definitely are set for hourly employees versus salaried employees. And those criteria for hourly employees, which are the employees you need to pay overtime to, they're entitled to overtime and they need to be paid at least $455 a week or 23,600 per year. They don't make decisions that impact the organization. So they're clearly just processing or clearly just sitting in a truck driving. They're not making impact decisions, unlike salaried employees. So salaried employees aren't entitled to overtime. They are employees who are compensated at least $684 per week or at least $35,569 per year, no less. They are your professional positions, right? They can be doctors, they could be lawyers, they can be architects, they could be HR professionals. Those are your managers. They are the people who make decisions that impact your organization. They are the people who There's my sides go again. They are the people who do the hiring and do the firing. They're the people who do budgets and do performance management. So step 4 in the hiring process. I have a little technical difficulty here, but step 4 in the hiring process would be to really set expectations for your employees so that they come on board and they have expectations. They feel like you are organized, and creating an employee handbook before you hire somebody um, is really, I think it's a really important step because you want the employees to clearly know what are your policies and procedures are, what are your practices, what can they expect from you as an employer, and then what they can expect um, the standards to be. So essentially, if you create the employee handbook prior to hiring, you'll be happy you did because you're setting that standard again. So the next time you hire a second employee, you have these standards all set in place. And the expectation is from day one, from your first employee to your second employee, and then you'll start seeing consistency within your organization as far as your expectations for the position, for moving your business forward. It also helps set the culture for your business. It sets all the expectations of behavior for your employees. It helps them understand the workplace, and it also eliminates any questions that they may have. So you have, so right now you have your job descriptions, you have your employee handbooks. There are some requirements when you hire an employee, and those requirements are is that you have to post federal laws and state laws. There is mandatory there are mandatory posters that you have to do. I'm a big fan of just ordering one big poster with all of the different laws that you have to post. And if you look at the slide I have here, you can see there's at least over 10 different laws that are required for you to post as an employer. If you get a poster, it's an all-in-one deal, and I'm not an advocate for, I don't sell these posters, but it's really easy because you buy a poster and then they turn around and they send you an updated poster every year. I think the range may be like $100, but it is so well worth it because it keeps you legally compliant in the notifications that you have to provide your employees. And some of those federal laws that employees have to be aware of and have to be seen if so they have to be posted in a public place like a break room, because if they have any questions about the law, they can go up to this poster and they can say, okay, these are my rights, and that's what is essential for posting. And some of those laws are FSLA, which is the Fair Labor Standard Act, ADA, which is the Americans with Disability Act, OSHA laws, workers' comp laws, child labor laws, sexual harassment. So it's just easier to do a poster. You could go on the websites, various websites, and you could download these posters and you can do it for free. But as you can tell from this poster, there are several laws and different websites you would need to go to make sure you have the most accurate information. And additionally, you'd have to do it every single year because laws change all of the time. So I know I'm moving quickly here, um, but we are on step 5, and I want to leave room for questions and answers. But we are on step 5. So there are two essential forms that you need to have before you hire your first employee. And those two forms, if anything else, you definitely need your I-9 form. And your I-9 form verifies your employment and the authorization that they can work in the United States. The employee must complete this form on day 1, and then you must examine the documents that they provide. So those documents would be like your social security number and your date of birth. It could be a passport. If you look on the back of the I-9 form that you can download off the website, off of the federal websites, if you look at those forms in the back of the form, there'll be 3 columns and it will tell you what are acceptable documentation that you can accept before an employee can work. So those documents need to be examined by you within 3 days. The employee needs to complete the form on day 1, but the employer has 3 days to really examine the documents and make sure that those documents are official documents. You can't accept copies. They have to be the original documents. The second form that you want to make sure employees fill out on day 1 is the W-4 form, the tax withholding form. What is key about the W-4 form is to make sure that you're not advising employees on how much they should claim. We we're not, unless you're a tax advisor, you shouldn't advise them. And it's just a very standard rule of thumb that we tell all employees in the HR world is definitely not to advise, because we aren't tax accountants and we don't want to be liable, or we don't want the employee to be upset when they come to us and they claimed exempt all year long, and now they have, you know, a bill from the IRS saying they've got to pay over $10,000 in taxes. And of course, I'm just, um, that's not factual. The process of not advising is, but obviously the numbers I just made up. But I think, not all of us, but I'm sure that we all um, don't like to have to owe Uncle Sam in the end, and neither would your employee. So it's best just not to advise. Okay, so we've created we've gone through a long process here of what we need to do to prepare for the employee. So we want to make sure that, and this is just advice, is we want to make sure that everything we talked about, all of those documents we talked about, are in the employee packet prior to their first day. So I advise to create a checklist, and I actually have one that I would be happy to share with all of you. It's extensive. You can delete it, what you don't need, or what doesn't apply to your business. But I do recommend that you use an employee checklist on their first day. That ensures that you will have every single document that you need to be legally compliant when you hire them. And these are just some of the documents that are on the checklist that you want to cover with them on their first day. So, their first day, before they start, you want to be prepared. You want them to know what your mission and your values are. You want to have an offer letter that has their start date, their official title, their job classification, whether they're exempt or non-exempt, and then how much they're being paid per hour or per year, depending on their job classification. You want to make sure that you have the W-4s ready, both the federal and state forms ready for them to sign off on or to fill out. Then you want to, of course, make sure you have that I-9 form that we talked about. If you're offering direct deposit for an employee and you want them to be paid direct deposit so you don't have to issue a check, then have a direct deposit form ready. Have an acknowledgement form if you're doing the employee handbook, have an acknowledgement form signing off that they have received it, because if they violate the terms of the employee handbook, you have their acknowledgement form saying that they did receive it and they do understand what the expectations are. You want to have any benefit forms and a summary of benefit forms if you are offering benefits to them. And then, of course, you want to have any policies that pertain to your business. Like, maybe you want an IT policy to make sure they're not shopping online while during working hours, or if you need a safety policy for your heavy equipment operator, then you want to have that policy for them to sign off as well. And then, of course, you want to let them know what the training process is and who they're going to be reporting to on in the afternoon or on day two, depending on how long your orientation process is. It really sets the tone when you have all of this paperwork set. It really sets the tone that you are an organized employer, and that you have these policies and procedures in place. Everything is organized, and you have it all in one packet, because the last thing you want to do is start chasing employees for all of this information when they start working. So think about this. All this time we just talked about, all of this organization, having all of these documents prepared, all the time you spent preparing for that employee to start, the time you spent preparing to get your EIN number, you considered the cost, you've created a job description, you created the employee handbook, you have all of this work vested in your employee, and now you are ready really to start the recruiting process, right? So of course you want to prepare interview questions. And you want to make sure that those interview questions are essential to the job. You want to make sure that if they are a cook and they are handling hot equipment, you want to make sure that your interview questions, you ask those specific questions like, how do you handle working in the heat? How do you handle working um, with with fire for cooking or with oils, those type of things. You want to make sure it's relevant to the job. Where employers get in trouble is when they don't ask questions that aren't relevant to the job. And a lot of employers could find themselves making conversation, like little conversation before the interview process. So you might have an applicant in front of you and you're waiting for another hiring manager to come to do the interview process with you, and you start talking, "Hey, the weather's nice. Hey, tell me about your wife and kids." That can be seen as discriminatory when you start talking about things outside of the job, even though it's casual conversation, even though you're trying to um, get the candidate to feel comfortable, you want to stay away from those questions. Because if you're asking somebody, let's just say somebody applied and this person's pregnant, and you're like, "Oh, when do you do?" Or you say, um, "How many more kids do you have?" And then you end up not hiring that person, they can come back to you and say, "You didn't hire me because I was pregnant. You didn't hire me because I had children." So just my advice would be to avoid all kinds of comfortable, casual conversation that don't pertain to the job. I mean, you can talk about the weather all day long, but don't talk about personal situations. So think about your interview process. So some of those questions, again, you want to ask, make them specific to the job. A lot of times people will want to ask open-ended questions, and those questions could look like this, like, tell me about a time when you did ABC, or describe a time when you did this, or tell me about a difficult conversation that you had with your boss and how was it handled. So you want to try to ask those open-ended questions and try to get them to elaborate on their experiences, and how they handle specific situations. Think about the situations they'll be handling in your business, and and try to put those in a formatted question. Okay, so now we have our interview questions ready. Let's post the job. How are we going to post the job? Indeed is really expensive. It is the number one resource, but it is very expensive. So if you want to think about cost savings, you may want to do word of mouth advertising. State career centers have a lot of free advertising. They post jobs. Those jobs scrape on other boards. The career centers are great resources. They'll help you from A to Z. They'll have job fairs set up. You could do job fairs. They'll bring candidates to you. So they're really a great resource when you hire employees or to look to hire employees. All right. So now you have a list of applicants and you're going through them and you're going to conduct the job interview. Of course, I've already discussed not asking questions that are personal in nature and just making sure that all of those questions are relevant to the job. And I cannot reiterate that enough because employers do get themselves in trouble when they are asking personal questions. So you've got your interview questions, you did your interviews, you have two candidates you want to potentially look at, but one maybe you have questions on. I always give advice to employers that when in doubt, don't hire. Because you've spent all of this time, all of these resources, you spent a lot of money finding this perfect candidate. And then now you have two, one's a potential, one's good. Um, but when in doubt, don't hire. Just continue and make sure you have that perfect fit for your position. Because when you make the wrong hire, it is, it turns out to be very costly. And then you have to go through this whole process all over again. So you make the offer, you're going to offer them a set salary, maybe it's $15 an hour. But be prepared to negotiate because that candidate may have the skill set to negotiate. So they may want 18. So are you prepared to pay 18? And I'm not saying lowball your offers. That's not what I'm saying, but offer them just be prepared to offer them a little bit more if they ask, or maybe you choose not to negotiate. Maybe it's just like, no, sorry, this is all I can offer. Um, and then once the offer is accepted, verbally accepted, you want to extend the offer with an offer letter. You want to make sure, again, going back to my slides, that it has um, the date they start, the rate of pay, their classification, who they'll report to, time to report. So you want to make sure that you have all of that information on that offer letter. Okay, so you are ready to hire, and you did. So that is really the end of my presentation. Again, I am a SCORE volunteer, which means I am happy to help you through the process. And of course, we have other SCORE volunteers that are great resources to you. Um, so I congratulate you in wanting to take this first step on hiring and growing your business. This, even though I went through the slides rather quickly, it is a crucial step of being organized. Everything we discussed is crucial to being organized and to start um, going through the process before you hire that employee. It's important that you do it right, and it does set the tone of your business. And if there isn't anything else, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. I have some questions here.
Looks like we've got a couple here. One asked early on, I see from Pam, and I also see your questions as well, Harry and Kirsty, so we will get to those. But Pam said that their business is both seasonal and virtual, and there's no building, it's virtual. And how does this impact requirements such as hourly versus salaried, as well as postings?
So the hourly versus salary, it doesn't matter if your employee is virtual or not. There are very strict standards on how you pay, how the classification of your employee, what their job functions are, and if you are paying overtime, if you're required to pay overtime or not. Did that answer your question?
We'll see if we get a follow-up from Pam there at all. But just a quick answer to Jonathan about the presentation and recording being available. Yes, both the presentation and recording will be available. I'll send those out within the next 24 hours. Moving on to a question from Kirsty here. They said, could you recommend any bias busting strategies for looking at applicant materials such as resumes?
Um, I'm not I guess I need to understand what you mean by bias busting. So, your resume, people's resume is what it is. It doesn't really say. I mean, it's really hard, like, right? If you look at the um job experiences, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the most experienced person or the best person for your business. So biased is really, there is no bias if you're really just taking an honest look at their work experience and their resumes. But if you want to reach out to me and have a conversation, we can discuss that a little bit more. But really, it's like, what does your job description look like? What what experience do you want? And matching those two pieces together, um, regardless.
Great. We've got a question here from Harry that says, how far in advance of needing an employee should a job posting be published?
So if you think about that, so let's just say you wanted somebody to start on June 1st, right? You need to fill the position by June 1st. I would at least plan at least 90 to 60 days to get yourself organized and to, especially if if you don't have any of these processes in place. It's not simple to create a job description, or it's not simple to create um, the employee handbook. So I would recommend as much time that you can allot to creating that. Like if you have that stuff already created, then you're probably, 30 days away because by the time you post a position, and it all depends on how you post the position, right? If you're going to post to Indeed, you might get quite a few resumes in advance, and then you have to think about reviewing those resumes, calling them. It's probably, about a week for the interview process if you can get them in right off the bat, and if people aren't on vacation, etc. Um, and then after you're going through the interview process, it's then negotiating the salary, which could take a couple of days, and then you want to start them. So I would certainly say, at least 30, 4 to 6 weeks out for sure, if you have those all of the processes in place that we discussed.
Great. Got a few more here. I'm just going in order. These are coming up for me. Got one from Molly that says, are there different levels of workman's comp?
Workers' comp, that is obviously for injury. So there's not really different levels of workers' comp. There would be different levels of injury. If somebody broke a leg on your property versus was killed on your property. Those are certainly different levels, but really workers' comp, if you're shopping for carriers, there's different levels there of what they provide. It would be just like shopping for a car automobile insurance, just a little bit more complex if you don't understand it. But workers' comp, if you go to the workers' comp board, you can website, you can take a look at what's there. But as far as different levels go, that would be more of the insurance provider. But the level workers' comp, their standards are very strict, or very um, in stone, written in stone. Like this is if this happens, this is what's going to happen, type of thing.
Great. This is a little more of a specific question, I suppose, but is organizing people the same as supervising people? I assume we're talking about job descriptions here.
Oh, so no, it's not. Supervising, they're the people who give you your tasks. They're the people who oversee what you're doing. And um, organization is just putting processes in place, right? On to get that process going. So there's a difference between, oh, she puts this is related to exempt versus non-exempt. So yes, that would be a big difference. So your supervisor impacts your employee decisions, right? So supervisors have an impact on your performance. Supervisors, um, they give you your job. They might be involved in the hiring and firing of you, but of employees. But organizing isn't. An organizer really, to me, is just organizing paperwork, setting schedules. Like, for example, if you have somebody who sets schedules and then you have someone who supervises, that's two different things, right? Somebody might set their schedules and say, okay, you're going to work Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 or from 3 to 11, where supervisors are the ones actually overseeing you and saying, you did a bad job or you did a good job, but you did this wrong and we've got to write you up. So they're impacting your employment, where like organizing schedulers aren't impacting your employment. They're just scheduling time. I hope that was an example that makes sense. You can always reach out to me. My contact information is on this slide and we can discuss more. But if hopefully I read your question right, and that was, um, and that I explained it.
Okay, looks like we got a follow-up from an earlier question. The previous question was about having a business that's seasonal and virtual, about in regards to requirements with hourly versus salary. Follow-up was that the weekly amount paid is higher and would qualify for salary, but because the job is seasonal and only 16 weeks or so, the total is lower and falls under hourly. And then they also were curious what to do about posters with no building. I assume that means job postings, but please correct me if I am interpreting that wrong, Pam.
So, while you're waiting for him to clarify, so if you own a ski resort, right, and you have your seasonal managers who are making decisions that impact people, they still would be considered salaried positions. Just because I get it, what you're saying about the yearly rate, but that is a yearly rate, right? They have to make $684 a week is what the slide was, or 35,000 per year. So if they're still making the 685 per week and they're seasonal and they're making those impacting decisions, then you could pay them salary. Um, so I hope that kind of clarifies if for seasonal versus non-seasonal.
I see. Pam was saying that they were referring to the requirements to put up a poster.
Okay, can you repeat the question for me?
Um, oh, I see. I see. So they're referring to posters about like fair employment and workers' comp, like those kind of mandated posters in a workplace. And since their business is virtual, they were curious what that means for them with regards to those kinds of posters.
Oh, okay. Um, so you'd want to have, I would, you can send, there's some that the posters offer an e-version of the posters, so you can send those posters out e-version. And that's really the nice thing. And there's actually a sign off that an electronic sign off if you go with the posters. Look at the e-version posters. And there's actually a sign off. So when they receive the poster and they open it up, they actually can sign off on that poster and then you have it. But there are e-versions of the poster, which is very cool.
Some great info. Thank you for clarifying, Pam. I appreciate you sticking with us there.
Yeah, same here.
Um, let's see. We have a question from Jonathan here. What about for independent contractors versus employers? Hiring people to do specific jobs without bringing them on as employees.
Right. So you can do one or two things, right? You can have them as a 1099 employee, and a 1099 contractor, right? And so that you would pay them just a flat rate. So if they're going to charge $25 an hour, you would pay them for that project. So, if they worked 4 hours, you'd pay them that $100. You don't have to worry about taking taxes out, anything like that. They're actually responsible for that. The one thing you do want to make sure that if you do have a 1099 come and work on your site, you want to make sure that they have insurance, um, because you don't want to be responsible for that. Um, the other thing you could do also is hire a temporary employee through like a contract agency, and they cover the cost of the insurances, the workers' comp, that type of thing. So those are two options that you can do if you didn't want to hire an employee, is do a 1099 employee and just figure out an hourly rate and let them do all of the rest of the work. But just make sure they have insurance for sure.
All right, we'll open the floor for any other final questions here, folks. Thank you guys for being so on it. We always appreciate when people are active in the chat and asking questions. It's definitely helpful for everybody. Somebody else might have that same question, but a little shy about asking it, so we always appreciate that. Um, well, hopefully I don't eat my words here, but it looks like we are kind of all buttoned up in the question department. I'd just like to, I'll turn my video on here so you guys can see me for the end. Hello, everyone. Just want to say thank you to everybody for attending the workshop today. As I said earlier, I will send you a copy of the slides in PDF form, as well as a link to the recording, which will be uploaded on YouTube for your consumption. That'll go out within the next 24 hours. You should also receive kind of a brief survey from us when that goes out from SCORE. And we very much appreciate if you can give us your feedback there. That helps us continually improve what we offer you guys. So we'd love to hear what you have to say. And just as a reminder, we offer free confidential one-on-one mentoring, whether you're starting or growing your business. It's easy to request a mentor. If you go to score.org, click that Find a Mentor button on the front page, enter your zip code, finish that form. You'll hear back from us within a couple business days. SCORE is also a nonprofit partner of the SBA. We've got 240 chapters around the country and 3 right here in Maine, South, Central, and North. And we are proud to say that we've helped over 11 million entrepreneurs since 1964. And we hope to see you again at one of our future events. Again, thank you all for coming out. I'm Michael. This was Danielle. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. I hope you find the information helpful. Thank you.
Yes, and please don't hesitate to reach out to Danielle with follow-ups on your questions. You should have her info from that slide, and you'll have it if you don't once I send them out. So take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.